The time has come. You're more than ready to have your baby. You go through the most surreal experience of childbirth, and you start your newest and most important chapter of life, parenthood. We all have heard of postpartum, but there's still some confusion when people discuss it. There are a lot of things that people do not tell you. I want you to be well aware as much as possible, so your experience is a bit easier and you can help the next person. So here are 10 things that I wish somebody told me about the postpartum period. First things first. What is postpartum? When many people hear the word postpartum, a lot of people think of postpartum depression. This is just a part of postpartum. We'll talk about postpartum depression a little bit later. However, postpartum is simply the period after giving childbirth. So most people acknowledge it up to about 3 months. They usually say postpartum period is about 12 weeks. It's very much a lot longer than that, usually up to at least 6 months. When it comes to the postpartum period, the majority of us know that it's our time for our body to recover, to heal. We know to stock up on pads, stock up on peri bottles, all of that good stuff, all of the good basics of postpartum. But many, including myself, had absolutely no idea what we were in for until, well, we were actually in it. Today, I wanted to share with you things that we don't typically hear people talk about when it comes to the postpartum period. First thing is postpartum hair loss. So I had vaguely heard about this term, but I had no idea what it really entailed. Around the 3-month mark after giving birth to my firstborn, the tragedy began. A little background: when you're pregnant, your hair is stuck in the growth phase. So once your body starts to recover from childbirth and actually realize, oh snap, she's not pregnant anymore, that's when that halts and it's like, okay, the whole growth phase kind of stops and all of the usual phases of your hair growth cycle start again. I was in complete shock with how much hair I was losing. Like every time I was washing my hair, I was losing chunks and chunks and chunks out of my hair. It was a really scary experience. And I feel like you've heard the term postpartum hair loss, but many people don't really go into details about how much hair you can lose. A lot of women, I've noticed, they talk about their new baby hairs, because a lot of women lose hair in this temple area right here. People with a lack of edges like me, it's a struggle. You can research more about postpartum hair loss and just the ins and outs of it, and also research how to get through it for yourself or things to help reduce hair loss, whatever. I will say from my experience, this time around, I did one thing differently from the first time I gave birth, and that was continue to take my prenatal vitamins. To this day, I am technically 9 months postpartum right now, and I'm still taking my prenatal vitamins. And while I still have lost some hair, it's not nearly as much as it was the first time around. A lot of us hear about preeclampsia during pregnancy. If you are in the United States and you are going through the medical system, I went through an OBGYN throughout my whole pregnancy. So I'm speaking to that. Each appointment, they take a urine sample and they get your blood pressure. And if you have higher blood pressure levels or you have protein in your urine, they will likely diagnose you with preeclampsia throughout your pregnancy. However, I've never heard of postpartum preeclampsia before. I was never warned about it. I had no idea what it was until it happened to me. What is postpartum preeclampsia? Postpartum preeclampsia is a serious disease that is related to high blood pressure levels. You can get postpartum preeclampsia anywhere from the day of giving birth up to 2 months after giving birth to your baby. So pay attention to some of these symptoms, because if you are in your postpartum period or you will be soon, these are things you need to look out for. So my biggest thing was I had the worst migraine I've ever felt. And when I'm saying a migraine, this was not a regular type of headache. This was just a stabbing pain in my head that no matter what I did, it wouldn't go away. I would drink a lot of water. I would sit in the dark. I was rotating Tylenol and ibuprofen. Nothing was helping this headache. And that was not normal for me at all. So I contacted my doctor and I told her I was having really bad headaches, and she asked me about my swelling. how swollen are you? And I told her I'm pretty swollen, but I didn't think that was out of the norm because a lot of the time, once people give birth, they are a little bit swollen. Some other symptoms that they say to look out for is extreme stomach pain, having your vision changing, like seeing spots and your vision kind of blurring, a lot of swelling in your hands and in your face, feeling nauseous and throwing up. So these are all other symptoms of postpartum preeclampsia. My main symptoms were the swelling and the headache. I contacted my doctor. She told me I need to come into labor and delivery ASAP. I went to the hospital. They checked my blood pressure and they immediately admitted me and started me on magnesium. If you ignore these symptoms, you can, like, this is life-threatening. You can have a stroke, you can have seizures, your organs can start to fail, and you can die. So don't ignore any symptoms in postpartum period at all. It's easy for you to just feel like, oh, I just had a baby. Of course, like, my body's not the same right now. This is all a part of healing, but it could be life-threatening, so definitely pay attention. Okay, so moving on. Another thing to look out for is kidney infections. Outside of having postpartum preeclampsia and my postpartum period, I also developed a kidney infection. It escalated from a bladder infection that I originally had. And I believe the reason I even got this to begin with is because during childbirth and after childbirth, being treated for the postpartum preeclampsia, I had to have a catheter to urinate. I think having that being put in and just all of the meddling inside of my body, it just led to infection. So some of the things that I was dealing with to alert me that I had a kidney infection was I had the chills really bad. I had a fever that wouldn't break. I was peeing often and I just wasn't feeling myself. Obviously, after childbirth, you're not going to feel like yourself, but I just still wasn't feeling right. And I was nervous, especially after having the big scare of postpartum preeclampsia. So went to the doctors. They diagnosed me with having a kidney infection. I quickly want to touch on disorders after pregnancy. So like I said earlier, a lot of people think that postpartum equals postpartum depression, and that's not the case. So postpartum depression, I simply know that it is the state of being depressed after giving birth. It can look like loss of interest, not connecting with your child, a lot of different things. You can research that on your own. I feel like postpartum depression is a lot bigger, and I feel like if you want to learn more about that, this is not the video to do so. You will find a lot of information on the internet to help you, and also your doctor. What I wanted to talk about was postpartum anxiety. I always heard about postpartum depression, but I never heard about postpartum anxiety. Postpartum anxiety is what I suffered from after giving birth to my firstborn. Postpartum anxiety is described as irrational fear or exaggerated worries that something's wrong or something's going to happen throughout the day. It could be related to the baby, it could be related to just everyday life, but it's like an exaggerated amount of fear. Postpartum anxiety is not really talked about often, and it is pretty common. So just a heads up, if you're feeling extremely worried, if you're feeling fearful, if you are having panic attacks, something to definitely talk to the doctor about, especially if you're somebody who had anxiety before having children. Okay, a less serious one that people don't tell you about postpartum, but it's pretty life-changing, I will have to say. Personally, I went up a whole shoe size after pregnancy.
It's these stupid feet! Oh, now come on. I bet they're not so bad. Whoa, now!
After popping out my firstborn, all of a sudden I'm a size 9 and all of my shoes that I have cannot fit me anymore. Apparently this is something that's quite common. Again, something I never heard of before. So I'm just trying to warn you so you are not so surprised like I was with all of these things. Another very surprising thing that I have found to happen in my postpartum period this time around is my period cycle. So really quick, if you're a guy watching this and you're grossed out by all of that, go ahead, take a quick break, mute, and I'll put on the screen when you can come back, okay? So go ahead. Okay, girls, listen up. My period cycle has completely changed since having my second born child, okay? So typically you have your period once a month, okay? But what happens when you get that time of the month twice in a month? Did you know that could happen to you? I didn't until it started happening to me. So usually, depending on if you're breastfeeding, all of these different factors, after you give birth, you take a little while to get your period cycle starting again. My period used to be every 28 to 29 days. Now it is around every 21 to 24 days. That's like a week being taken off of my whole menstrual cycle. And it matters. That extra week matters. Okay. And this is for every single person. This is for the person who gave birth, and this is the person who impregnated. This is for friends. This is for loved ones. This is for everybody, okay? This is the most important to me personally, okay? Listen up, please. Come here. Come here. All right. You are extremely fertile after giving birth. Okay, if you didn't hear me, I said you are extremely fertile after giving birth. Okay? I get pregnant again 5 months postpartum after having my firstborn child. When you do have a baby and once you're all cleared from the doctor and they say, Mama, you can go ahead and get your groove on, be smart about how you get your groove on unless you want to get pregnant again.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die.
Next thing is how your stomach is going to look. You are still going to be going through contractions because your uterus is... You are going to be going through contractions still because your uterus is still shrinking. You might still feel like cramping. You're going to feel like the contraction type feelings, but more dull during this period. It doesn't last for many days, but just a heads up there. Your stomach is going to look like a little hard. It's gonna feel hard. It's just gonna look a little off for a little while. On top of your stomach just looking a little bit hard, feeling hard, and having those uterus contractions, most, including myself, have a linea nigra, which is the line that goes from like the top to the bottom of your stomach. Sometimes it's halfway to the belly button. It looks different on all women. I didn't know about that in pregnancy, and I definitely didn't know in the postpartum period that it takes months to go away. Another thing I wish somebody told me about is your boobs. You are going to have engorged breasts. You may decide, I don't want to breastfeed. It's not like your mind just tells your breasts, oh, she's not breastfeeding. You don't have to work. Let's move on. After you give birth, your body is still going to produce milk. I did not know many people who breastfed, so I did not know how any of it worked. I just thought you make the decision to do it or not do it and you go from there. But no, your body is still going to produce that milk and your boobs are going to fill up because there is no release being given. To be as vivid as I possibly can, they're going to be hard as rock everywhere, all around the full circumference of your boob. They're going to grow to an astronomical size that you have never seen before. And on top of that, they're going to feel like you can break a brick on them. Honestly, that's how they're going to feel. The simplest touch is going to hurt. Don't touch them as much as you can. Keep your hands off of them. Try not to take hot showers and let water hit them. My best advice is to put ice on them and kind of let them be, because in a couple of days to a week, it's going to go down and everything's going to go back to normal as far as your boobs go. The last thing, pelvic floor weakness. So have you ever heard a pregnant person say, or maybe somebody, a mom, oh, you want to say something? Say la la la. Ever heard a mom or a pregnant person say they sneezed and they accidentally peed on themselves? That's where pelvic floor weakness comes into play and affects a lot of people who give birth. So I suggest to look into pelvic floor therapy if it's something included with your insurance, if it can be free, if it can be a low cost. I definitely suggest looking into pelvic floor therapy because you may just need it unless you want to be peeing on yourself from sneezing and all of the simple things beforehand or after. I don't think it's ever too late, so definitely check it out. See, if I had somebody tell me all of these things before I had kids, things probably would have ended up a lot differently for me each time, okay? So I'm trying to help you out here. Perfect time for you to go and check out my I'm Pregnant Again video where I get the surprise of my life of finding out that I am pregnant only 6 months after having my firstborn. I'll meet you over there in the comments.